Hello, so this is for the subject investment and portfolio management. And the topic for this one is the types of financial analysis. So we have here an article from corporatefinanceinstitute.com. Okay. So for the introduction, what is financial analysis? So financial analysis involves using financial data, normally taken from the financial statements, to assess a company's performance. Essentially, performance refers to profitability of the company and make recommendations about how it can improve going forward. So aside from profitability, then efficiency of operations is also looked into. Financial analysts primarily carry out their work in Excel, spreadsheet, kasi may mga formula dyan, mas madaling, parang, may mga functions that would aid in sorting out data or information. Using a spreadsheet to analyze historical data and make projections of how they think the company will perform in the future. So ito yung guide. Essentially, the whole article is a guide which will cover the most common types of financial analysis performed by professionals. Okay. So in types of financial analysis, so we have vertical, horizontal, leverage, growth, profitability, liquidity, efficiency, cash flow, rates of return, valuation, scenario and sensitivity, and then variance. Okay, lahat ng to i-discuss further into the article, alright? So yeah, let's start with vertical analysis. Sorry. Itong vertical analysis, it involves looking at various components of the income statement and dividing them by revenue to express them as a percentage. For this to be most effective, the result should be benchmarked against other companies in the same industry to see how well the company is performing. So, di ba dun sa fundamental analysis video, we've mentioned na hindi lang yung financial statements ng particular company ang titingnan. You have to compare it with the industry data para alam mo if it's actually performing well or if it's performing worse compared to the other companies in the same industry. And then, of course, you also have to look into the whole economy. So, ano ba yung performance? Kasi, di ba, meron nga tayong systematic risk na nag-a-apply sa lahat ng companies or affecting all companies. So, in a way, you have to check whether the economic situation as a whole has an effect on the particular industry that the company is operating in. Okay? So, ayan. Itong vertical analysis, kaya siya tinawag na vertical, di ba, pag ganon. Di ba yung income statement mo, you have revenue sa taas, and then you have your expenses, naka-itemized, yung mga major expenses ng company, especially cost of producing the goods or services, and then you have the operating expenses, and then the administrative and selling expenses. And then sa kababaan, you have your net profit, less the interest or taxes then. And then, kababaan, you have yung pinakang net profit talaga after interest and taxes. Okay? So, bali dito sa vertical analysis, ang pinakang base is the revenue. Siya yung pinakang pinakonsider as base or when you look into the percentages, siya yung 100%. Okay? And then, yung bawat item na sumunod sa kanya, i-divide mo lang, kunwari, salaries and wages. Yung amount niya, i-divide mo by the total amount ng revenue, para makuha mo yung percentage. So, doon makikita mo, okay, so sa bawat revenue pala nagagastos ng company is, let's say, 60% na pupunta sa salaries and wages. Ayan. So, doon mo siya makikita. Kung ano yung, magkano yung share ng bawat items ng expenses. Okay, so let's say, utilities, kunwari, let's say, 5% lang pala ng revenue ang napupunta or binabayad ng company to utilities. Okay? So, yan. Doon mo siya makikita. And in a way, tawag dito, it would help you to analyze kung aling expenses ng company ang, nag-i-eat up ng karamihan ng kinikita rin ng company. So, alin dyan yung may pinakamataas na percentage, and then yung kasunod, pababa. Okay, kasi kumbaga, bibigyan mo siya ng, hindi naman importance, but you'll have to give attention to it, para ma-check mo. Tapos, yun nga, i-compare mo kasi siya sa industry average. Normal ba na sa industry natin is inaabot ng 60% of revenue ang napupunta sa salaries and wages? Or baka itong company lang natin kasi sobra-sobra ng benefits ang binibigay sa mga employees or for some reason. Okay, so mga ganyan. And then utilities, ano pa bang mga expenses? Advertising, depreciation, security, representation, activities. So may activities ng company. Training and development, mga ganyan. Okay? So, essentially, tinitingnan kung how much percentage those expenses are compared to the revenue. Tapos, syempre, yung pinakababa, net income after interest and taxes, magkano? Let's say 5% lang ba? So, sa bawat piso na kinikita ng company, 5 cents ba? Tama ba? 5 cents lang ang yung pinakang profit talaga, net profit ng company. Okay, ayan. The process is sometimes called common-sized income statement as it allows an analyst to compare companies of different sizes by evaluating their margins instead of their dollars. Ayan. Kasi nga, di ba magkakaiba ng scale ang companies? Meron kang small company, merong mga medium companies, tapos meron kang large companies. Pwede silang nag-operate in the same, industry. Okay? Pero syempre, hindi mo naman pwedeng i-compare yung kanilang actual values. Let's say, ang income nitong si small company is 1 million lang. Tapos itong si medium company is 5 million. Hindi mo pwedeng i-compare na, 1 million, 5 million kasi magkaiba naman sila ng scale of operations. Pero kapag kinuha mo yung percentages, ayan, mas comparable na silang tingnan. Okay? And then, hindi lang naman sa income statement pwedeng gamitin itong vertical analysis. Pwede mo rin siyang gamitin sa balance sheet or sa statement of financial position. Pagdating sa financial position, ang gagamitin mo lang doon na base ay total assets. So, kunwari, cash, pag magko-compute ka, yung amount ng cash divided by the total assets para makita mo, of the total assets, how much percentage is the cash. Okay? So, let's say 10%. Uy, sa kabuuan ng assets ng company, 10% pala ay cash. Okay? Tapos, let's say 15% ay receivables, 30% ay inventories, and ganyan. So on and so forth. Okay? So, ayan. Pwede mo rin siyang gamitin sa balance sheet, hindi lang sa income statement. Okay? Next natin, horizontal analysis. Pwede mong gamitin, again, income statement and balance sheet. Ayan. So, ang ginagawa naman dito, several years. Normally, yung financial statement na sinasubmit ng companies to the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, comparative financial statement siya. So, yung current year na pinapasa nila, palaging may katabi siya na yung previous year. Okay? So, in that sense, pwede mo siyang i-compare kasi agad, makikita mo yung changes or consistency on certain items. Okay? And then, itong sa horizontal analysis, ito naman, normally, let's say 3 years, current year, tapos yung previous 2 years, or kapag 5 years, ang gusto niyang tingnan, in a way, makikita kasi dito yung nagiging growth ng company. Lumalaki ba siya over the years, or pababa ba, or aling items yung consistent ang growth din, or aling items yung, hindi naman napapabayaan, pero parang gano'n na nga, okay? So, ayun. So, sa 5-year analysis naman, so you have your current year and then the previous 4 years, okay? Tapos, ang base year mo doon, edi yung pinaka earliest date, okay? So, let's say, 2016 to 2020, okay? So, ang base year mo doon would be 2016, okay? Kasi yung pinakang base, tapos i-compare mo yung kasunod na year, kukunin mo yung difference ng amounts, tapos kukunin mo yung percentage, ang base mo or denominator would be yung amount ng 2016 na year. Okay, so makikita mo doon, ay nag-increase pala ng 3% yung revenue, kunwari. Okay, tapos kasunod na taon, 2018, Dalawa kasi yun, pwedeng i-compare mo siya naka-base dun sa 2016 para makita mo yung, growth niya based on the 2016 ay yung first year. So yun, let's say 3% noong 2017, 2018 naging 5%, tapos 2019 naging 6%, tapos 2020 dahil may pandemic biglang naging 4% lang or 3%, ganyan. Kunwari lang. Okay. So, yun yung horizontal analysis. Kaya siya tinawag na horizontal kasi pag ganun, you have your year, tapos same items. Let's say, revenue yan. O revenue nitong 2016, compare mo sa revenue ng 2017, tapos compare mo sa revenue ng 2018. Okay. So, dito, normally, yung growth ang tinitingnan. Okay. Gano siya, either lumaki ba siya over the years, how much is the growth, or kung lumiliit naman siya. Normally, yung pagliit, you want that in the expense accounts. Gusto mo na ma-minimize yung cost of operating the business while being able to maximize naman yung sa revenue. Okay? So, pagdating doon, yung sa revenue, gusto mo increasing siya. Tapos yung sa expenses, gusto mo decreasing siya. Pero syempre, if it's not possible, edi as much as possible, sana ay consistent man lang, okay? Or, kung mayroon siyang increase din, comparable siya dun sa increase ng revenue. Hindi yung mas mataas pa yung naging increase sa expenses compared dun sa naging increase sa revenue. So, that is a cause for concern, management-wise. Pero as investors, edi isipin mo na lang, parang hindi na bigyang pansin ng management, ng maayos yung ganong scenario. Okay, example. And yeah, determine the growth rate, determine if a company is growing or declining, and identify important trends. When building financial models, there will typically be at least 3 years of historical financial information and 5 years of forecasted information. Okay, so you have your historical data, and by using the historical data, let's say makita mo, every year tumataas ng 3% yung revenue. Then you can project data, project ibig sabihin sa future. Pwede mong i-estimate kung magkano yung magiging figures in the future by using yung trends na nakita mo dun sa historical data. Okay? So kung 5 years yung trend in the previous years, pwede mong i-assume na in the future years, 5% then each year yung magiging increase niya, okay, for that particular item. Okay. Depending on yung result ng horizontal analysis mo on the historical data, kung ano yung gagamitin mo sa projection mo din for the future years. Okay. So, yan. Pwede siyang gamitin. Okay. And then, next, we have leverage analysis. Ang ibig sabihin ng leverage is yung pinanggalingan ng pondo ng company. Pag sinabi natin financial leverage, magkano inutang ng company to fund whatever expenses that they have, operations-wise, production-wise, okay? And then we have operating leverage. Yung operating leverage, yun yung fund naman na nanggaling sa owners or sa shareholders ng company mismo. Ibig sabihin, hindi siya utang, equity siya. Okay, so you have financial, utang, then you have operating leverage, na ownership or equity. Okay? Pero itong leverage analysis, more on sa utang. Okay? Kasi as investors, concerned tayo kung masyado bang malaki ang inutang nitong company compared sa equity and also magkano yung, ginagastos nila for interest payments. Kasi diba, pag utang, normally nakalock yung interest na babayaran. Unlike dun sa equity, shareholders, di ba kapag hindi naman kumita yung company, pwedeng hindi mag-declare ng dividends or kapag maraming plans yung company, doon nila gagamitin yung income nila, then they are also allowed not to declare dividends. Okay? Unlike dun sa utang nga na they're required to pay the interest that they promised. Okay? So moving on, leverage ratios are one of the most common methods analysts use to evaluate company performance. Again, in a way, profitability and efficiency of operations, normally, yung pina-point out dito sa performance. A single financial metric like total debt, may not be that insightful on its own, yes. Normally, as a financial statement analysis din, meron tayo tinatawag na articulation analysis. Dun sa articulation, you have, kumbaga, yung financial statements natin, di ba, we have income statement, balance sheet, statement of changes in equity, statement of cash flows, tapos notes of financial statements, yun. Hindi pwede na titingnan mo lang yung isang statement na stand-alone. So, kunwari, income statement lang yung tiningnan mo. Hindi mo siya kinonect dun sa other, dun sa other components of financial statement. So, more likely than not, magiging mali yung interpretation mo. Kasi hindi mo chinek, let's say nakita mo lang, net income, 10 million, ang laki. Hindi mo tiningnan, pagdating sa statement of financial position, siya pala ay nasa receivables pa, hindi pa cash, or ginamit na ng company to buy equipments or machineries to improve their operations. So, di ba, nakatie up na dun yung income nila. So, more likely than not, mas maliit na yung amount that they can use to declare as dividends or to increase the book value no shareholdings ng company. Okay. So, ayun nga. Kailangan ay i-connect mo siya with the other financial statements na tawag doon, articulation analysis. Okay. Segue lang. Okay, balik tayo dito kay leverage. So, ito, it's helpful to compare it to a company's total equity to get a full picture of the capital structure. Ayan. Minsan kinuha rin yung percentage, out of the total liabilities and equity, magkano yung liabilities, ilang percent, di ba? Di ba yung total liab and equity equal siya sa, total assets. So, kumbaga, of the total assets, how much is funded by creditors and how much is funded by owners. Okay? So, yung total equity, divide mo siya dun sa total assets, makukuha mo yung percentage. Okay? Siguro depending on the industry, So, normally sa mga banks, financial institutions, normal na malaki talaga ang liabilities compared to equity. But for, let's say, merchandising, manufacturing, and service, or manufacturing and merchandising, doon muna tayo mag-focus. Normally, tawag dito, mas malaki talaga yung equity compared to the liability. And pinakang limit na siguro yung 50-50. Although, syempre, mas preferred pa rin na mas mataas yung equity. So, siguro 51-49 ang pinakang limit. But anything lower than that, as long as, di ba, mas malaki yung equity kesa sa liability, that is seen as a good thing. Okay? So, yan. Tapos, another is, tawag dito, you can also compute this by this one. Di ba yung kanina, total liab divided by total assets for you to get kung how much is being funded by the creditors. Okay, tapos itong isa naman, debt over equity. Kino-compare mo yung debt compared dun sa yung funds coming from creditors, compare mo dun sa funds coming from the owners. Okay, so normally kapag mas maliit ito, mas maganda. Okay, because ibig sabihin, funded siya by, it's more funded by the owners. Okay? Pero kapag malaki siya, especially kung lumampas sa 1, ibig sabihin, mas mataas yung funded by creditors. In a way, hindi siya kagandahan kasi nga, in terms of interest, masyadong malaki ang babayaran ng interest compared dun sa kapag owners ang nag-fund ng business. Tapos, andun din yung, in case na magsara, yung company, syempre, unang babayaran yung mga creditors, compared sa owners. Kung ano yung matitira na lang, yun lang yung matatanggap ng owners, paghati-hatian ng owners. Pero yung creditors, tawag dito, normally, in case of liquidation, tawag dito, significant portion pa rin nung pinautang nila ang mababawi nila during the liquidation process. Lalo na kung mayroong pinramis na collateral against dun sa inutang ng business. Okay? Alright, common examples ng ratios na ginagamit for leverage analysis. So, we have yun nga yung, total liab over total assets. And then, secondly, you have debt over equity. Ayan na. Tapos yung kasunod, debt over EBITDA. Itong EBITDA ay earnings before income, interest and taxes. Okay? Ano yung the? Forgot. I couldn't remember kung anong EBITDA. Okay, EBIT. Oh, depreciation and amortization. Nandito pala. Thank you. Ayan, so in that, total liabilities divided by earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Okay? Tapos, ito namang isa, EBIT over interest. So, yung EBIT niya is earnings before interest and taxes. Ano? And then you have your interest. Kung magkano yung binayad na interest as against dun sa inutang ng business. And then you have DuPont analysis, combination of ratios often referred to as the pyramid of ratios, including leverage and liquidity analysis. Okay, medyo advanced itong DuPont, but banggit lang. Okay? In a way, kumbaga, may-measure niya is leverage pa din. Okay? Growth rates. Okay, kasunod na. Analyzing historical growth rates and projecting future ones are a big part of any financial analyst job. Common examples of analyzing growth, yung year over year, horizontal analysis, ano. And then yung regression analysis, ang ginagawa naman dito is, kapag ba nag-increase yung certain item, meron bang similar, similar reaction yung other items in the financial statements, okay? So, let's say yung revenue, tumaas yung revenue, tapos sa may baba, sa mga expenses, nakita na, tumaas din yung expenses ng company for, let's say, advertising. So, pwede mo bang, in a way, i-connect yung dalawa na by increasing the advertising and the promotions expense, does it contribute to the increase in the revenue of the company? Okay. So, dun sa regression, you're trying to find a connection or relationship between the items in the financial statements. Okay. So, ayan. Pwede mo siyang tingnan din using the horizontal analysis. Ano? Ayan. And then bottom-up analysis starting with individual drivers of revenue in the business. So, ito, syempre, tawag dito. Titingnan mo yung individual items and since revenue yung pinag-uusapan dito, the income statement, ano. Tapos, pwede mong tingnan kung, yun nga, dun sa, tawag dito, trend analysis din, horizontal analysis, makita mo kung meron nga siyang effect dun sa revenue ng company. Okay. Tapos ito namang top-down analysis, outside the financial statement. Ito kasi ang focus mo ay market size. So, ang information na kailangan mo dito, you have the information about the company and then information about the industry, average or industry mismo, okay? Para alam mo magkano yun, di ba kasi market size ito, saka market share yung hinahanap, okay? So, over the years ba, tumataas yung market share natin? Tumataas or lumalaki yung ating market size? Nare-retain ba natin yung ating clients or customers? Nadadagdagan ba yung ating clients and customers? Okay. So, yun yung hinahanap dito. And in a way, makakatulong kasi to sa pag-project ng revenue ng company in the future years. Okay, so let's say over the last 5 years, nadadagdagan yung ating customers by, let's say, 3% na 3% every year. So, pag nag-project ka ng information over the next few years, so pwede mong gamitin yung information na yun. Okay? And then, of course, yung market size kasi, syempre, yun yung pinagkukunin ng revenue. So, you can use it to project how much revenue the company would get. Okay? So, just another way to project yung mga ganyang items. Okay? And then, you have your other forecasting methods. Pero pwede mo na namang gamitin itong mga to. Okay? Growth rate. Ayan. Next, we have profitability analysis. So, pinakang performance na, bottom line performance ng company, profit. So, of course, as investors, you want to invest in companies that are profitable. Profitability, type of income statement analysis, kasi doon mo makikita ang profit. Assess how attractive the economics of a business are. So, examples ng profitability measures, gross margin. Ang gross margin, you have your revenue minus the cost of sales or services, yung direct cost na tinatawag natin, and then you have your operating operating profit or gross profit or gross margin. So, yun. So, for example, revenue 100, tapos yung direct cost, yung ginastos nyo sa pag-produce ng products or service na yan is, let's say, 50. Okay, so you have gross margin na 50 din. Okay, so in a way, parang 50%. Okay, so yan. Mas malaking gross margin, edi mas maganda. Okay, EBITDA, so earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So, di ba you have your revenue minus direct cost, you have your gross profit or gross margin, minus the operating expenses. Yung sa operating expenses, hindi pa kasama doon yung apat na yon. Okay? Hindi mo pa kasama doon yung interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. After the operating expenses, you have the operating profit, or you can also call it EBITDA. Okay? Tapos, pag nabawas mo na siya, yung matitira, yun yung EBITDA. Okay? Tapos yung EBITDA, divide mo by the total revenue, nakukuha mo yung percentage. Okay? Yun yung EBITDA margin natin. Okay? Tapos itong EBIT naman, you have your EBITDA, ibawas mo ang depreciation and amortization, makukuha mo yung EBIT. Okay? Okay, pag kunwari, you have your EBITDA, bawas mo yung depreciation and amortization, tapos makukuha mo yung EBIT. Tapos yung amount ng EBIT, i-divide mo ulit by the amount of revenue, makukuha mo yung percentage, magkano ang EBIT margin. Okay? Tapos yung net profit margin naman, yung ibabawas mo na from EBIT, ibabawas mo yung interest and taxes. Okay, tapos ang matitira na lang talaga is yung pinakang earnings na matitira sa company. Okay, yung tipong wala na talagang babayaran, nabayaran na lahat, nabawas na lahat. Okay, so yun yung pinakang net profit margin ng company. So yung value niya or yung amount, divide mo by the total revenue, nakukuha mo yung percentage or the net profit margin. Okay, so mas mataas, syempre na value, mas maganda kasi mas profitable siya. Okay, but industry average, 5 to 10% na net profit margin, maganda na yon. If it's higher, it would depend again on the industry, Kasi merong mga certain industries na hindi naman ganun kataasan yung kanilang expenses on producing the product or the service. So, yun, mas mataas yung kanilang net profit margin. Okay, that's yung mga communications company, utility companies, ganyan, in a way. Okay, pero yung sa kanila naman kasi, kaya mataas yung net profit margin nila kasi yung kanilang investment cost. Di ba yung mga towers nila, mga, basta yung mga ginagamit nila to provide a service, masyadong mataas naman yung kanilang investment. Na, of course, siguro mga previous years or previous decades pa nila yung nagastos. Pero ngayon pa lang nila nababawi in the form of the net profit. Okay. Next, we have liquidity analysis. So, type of financial analysis that focuses on the balance sheet naman. Okay. Particularly, companies' ability to meet short-term obligations. Okay. Pag short-term, less than a year. Pag long-term, more than 1 year. So, common examples ng liquidity. Again, yung liquidity is the ability to convert it into cash. Okay? Either yung kanilang, receivables, magiging cash. Gano'ng katagal before nila makolect yung receivables. Or pwede rin sa inventory, gano'ng katagal before nila maibenta yung kanilang inventory. Bago yung napagbentahan on credit is makokollect into cash. Okay? So, ayun. But, in a way, ayan, ito yung mga pwedeng tingnan. Current ratio, itong current ratio is, di ba sa balance sheet, meron tayong current assets, tapos sa baba, merong current liabilities. So, yung current ratio, you just divide current assets divided by the current liabilities. Okay? Pag equal to 1 yon, ibig sabihin, sakto lang yung current assets to pay off the current liabilities. Okay? So, mas malaki na ratio mas maganda. Ibig sabihin, mas marami yung current assets ng company at even if they pay off yung kanilang current liabilities, may matitira pa rin sa kanila. Okay? So, for this one, mas maganda, mas mataas siya sa 1. Okay? Kapag mas maliit sa 1, ibig sabihin, kulang yung kanilang current assets to pay off their current liabilities. Okay? And in a way, that's bad kasi, di ba, mag-juju na yung utang, walang pambayad yung company. That's not good. Okay? Next, acid test or quick ratio. Ayan, tinatawag din natin na quick ratio. Ibig sabihin na kinoconsider lang dito ay yung mga current assets na immediately convertible to cash. Okay? So, of course, you have your cash kasi cash na siya. And then, the receivable, kasi yung receivable, kukolektahin mo na lang from the customers. Okay? So, normally, yung dalawang yun lang. Tapos, yung mga short-term investments nila, especially yung mga nasa money market. Yung money market kasi, para siyang tawag dito, demand deposit na, merong short-term din naman na time deposit, So, let's say less than 90 days. Ayan, ibig sabihin, parang pinahiram mo lang sa banking institution or financial institution yung pera, tapos after that period, babalik nila sa'yo, may kasamang interest. Okay? So, yun yung mga market securities natin. Okay? So, yung tatlo, normally, ang sinasama, tapos divided by the current liabilities, makukuha mo yung acid test ratio or quick ratio. Okay? Yung inventory, hindi sinasama kasi medyo mahabang process pa siya before maging cash. Ibebenta pa siya, tapos kukolektahin pa from customers yung bayad before pa siya maging cash. Okay? So, in a way, hindi siya sinasama sa acid test. Sa acid test, again, cash, receivable, market securities. Say lang. And the fourth, kagaya ng current ratio, mas malaki, more than 1, much better. Okay? Yung cash ratio, ayan, mas matindi. Yung cash lang mismo ang ginagamit over current liabilities. Ibig sabihin, may sapat pa na cash ang company para bayaran yung current liabilities niya. Okay? So, if it's equal to 1 or more than 1, edi, again, it's good. Although, for the most part, hindi naman karamihan. Pwede itong mag-below 1 kasi karamihan naman talaga ng businesses, yung cash nila, hindi naman sinasapat dun sa kanilang current liabilities. So, out of all this, siguro ito yung normal na ginagamit, current ratio, But if you want to be conservative, itong acid test ratio. If you want to be even more conservative, mag-cash ratio ka. Okay? But for the most part, acceptable na tong acid test ratio. Conservative na yan. Okay? Yung sa mga normal, chill na businesses, current ratio is good enough. Okay? Net working capital, difference ng current assets and current liabilities. So, you have your current assets, ibawas mo yung current liabilities, may matitira pa ba ng working capital ang company? Okay? So, yung matitira, current assets minus current net working capital. Ibig sabihin, kung babayaran na ngayon ng businesses yung current liabilities nila, may matitira pa ba para gamitin ng business in the operations. Okay? Kaya siya net working capital. Okay? Moving on. Efficiency analysis. Ang efficiency, again, utilization of resources to obtain maximum profit. So, ibig sabihin, nagagamit ba ng maayos ng company yung kanilang resources to earn revenue. Okay? Look at how well a company manages its assets and uses them to generate revenue and cash flow. So, common efficiency ratios, asset turnover. Normally, ginagamit to sa receivable, saka sa inventory turnover. Kino-compute gaano katagal before yung receivables ay makollect ng company maging cash. Okay? Tapos yung sa inventory turnover naman, gaano katagal before yung inventory maibenta, tapos yung napagbentahan, makollect ng company, tapos yung collection ay di cash na ng company. So, yun, tinitingnan. The shorter it is, edi the better. Ibig sabihin, nakokollect agad ng mabilis yung receivable or naibebenta agad ng mabilis yung inventory ng company, nakokollect agad nagiging cash. Kasi yung cash, yung pinakang resource talaga na magagamit ng company in their operations. Saan ba nila ginagamit yung cash? Siyempre, pambayad ng employees nila, pambayad ng suppliers, pinagkukunan nila ng kanilang inventories, and pambayad ng utilities, and then, of course, other expenses nila na necessary for running the business. Okay? Yung fixed asset turnover ratio naman, di ba fixed asset, we have, building, machinery, equipment, vehicles, ganyan. So, kumbaga, ang tinitingnan dito is nakakatulong ba or nakakapag-contribute in the production itong mga fixed assets na ito, and then how long before sila ay i-replace or palitan. Okay? Kumbaga na ma-maximize ba yung useful life nung mga assets. Kunwari, machinery. Nung binili mo yung machinery, ang sabi ng supplier, magagamit niyo po yan for 5 years. Okay? Ngayon, tiningnan, nagamit nga ba ng 5 years yung fixed asset na yan? Okay? So, tiningnan, anong gusto nyo? Shorter. Okay, so let's say shorter, nagamit lang for 4 years yung machinery, tapos sobrang magastos na sa repairs and maintenance. So, instead of doing that, bumili na lang ng replacement. Okay? So, in that sense, parang hindi mo na-maximize yung supposedly ay benefit na makukuha mo dapat dun sa fixed asset na yun. Kasi instead of using it for 5 years, 4 years lang ang nangyari. Okay? On the other hand, kapag naman, maganda talaga yung machinery, let's say, after 6 years, andyan pa rin, ginagamit nyo pa rin sa operations, maganda pa rin ang performance, although may konting repair, maintenance, hindi ganun ka-significant yung amount, tapos yung production naman niya, halos same pa rin naman ng mga previous years, ganun pa rin nakarami na units yung napoproduce niya. So, in that case, edi, sulit, yung pagkakabili ng machinery na yon. Okay, so dito naman siya tinitingnan sa fixed asset turnover. When the company buys a fixed asset, na-maximize ba yung utilization niya? Okay? Nagagamit ba siya dun sa, supposedly number of years na magagamit dapat siya? Okay? So, ayan. Cash conversion ratio, parang dito sa asset turnover, yung binanggit natin kanina. Cash and inventory, yan normally, receivable saka inventory, yan normally yung tinitingnan. Ito cash, I think cash to cash ito. Cash to cash. Ano ba yung cash to cash? Ibig sabihin yung cash, ginamit mo to buy inventories, yung inventory, ibebenta mo, tapos yung napagbentahan, i-collect mo, magiging cash ulit. Kaya siya ay cash to cash conversion. So, gaano katagal yung process na yon. And then, of course, itong inventory, edi from inventory na siya, bebenta, collect into cash. Okay? Again, for this one, itong sa asset, cash, inventory, receivable. Of course, the shorter the period, the better. Okay? Dito sa fixed asset, because you want to maximize yung pagkakagamit ng machinery, equipment, building. So, you want this to be longer. Longer amount of years. So, ayan ang efficiency. Next, we have cash flow. Diba? Cash is king. Kasi nga, yan yung pwede mo nang magamit to, pay off suppliers, pay off expenses. Okay? Hindi mo naman kasi pwedeng ipambayad sa iba yung, receivable, inventory, fixed assets mo. Hindi nila tatanggapin as a form of payment. So, cash is king pa din. Okay? So, in a way, merong big emphasis is placed on a company's ability to generate cash flow. Okay? Analysts across a wide range of finance careers spend a great deal of time looking at companies' cash flow profiles. Okay? So, dito naman, statement of cash flow ang titingnan. Sorry. Okay, tapos dun sa cash flow, nakaseparate siya into 3 sections. Yung kaunahan, operating activities. So, operating yung, normal selling structure. Produce ng product, ibebenta nila, kokolect nila yung payment. Okay, that's the operating. Yung sa investing, bumili sila ng machineries, ng fixed assets, or yung mga luma nila na fixed assets, binenta nila. Yan ang investing activities. Tapos itong financing naman, nangutang sila or nagbayad ng utang, or nag-issue ng bagong shares, may natanggap silang, proceeds from new shareholders, funding, capital. So, financing activities yon. Pero normally, nagiging focus ng investors or whoever's using the financial statements ay itong operating activities talaga. So, kumbaga, magkanong cash ang nag-generate ng inyong operations. Kaya ito yung tinitingnan. Kasi after these 3 sessions kasi makikita mo yung net movement sa cash, magkano tinaas or binaba ng cash compared to last year. So, yun kasi hindi mo siya, I can't rely on that figure kasi nga affected siya nitong investing and financing activities. Okay, so, normally, ang focus ng isang tao na nagbabasa ng statement of cash flows ay itong operating activities. Okay? So, yan, operating cash flow, amount of cash generated by regular operation of the business. Normally for 1 year. And then you have your free cash flow. Ibig sabihin nun ay, a company's ability to produce what investors care most about. Cash that's available to be distributed in discretionary way. Okay? So, pwede kasi you have your cash, diba? Okay. Pero in a way, hindi mo ito makikita kasi sa statement of cash flows kasi this is more internal. Although makikita mo yung cash flow dito sa statement of cash flows, hindi mo kasi kita dyan yung plans ng company. Let's say ang company they have plans to use 15 million to build another branch or they want to use 5 million to buy another machinery. Hindi mo siya kita dun eh. Pero itong free cash flow kasi is you have your cash. In a way, under to ng budgeting ng mga businesses. So, pag nakita nyo dyan yung actual cash that they have, magbabawas yan for their to set aside or to earmark the funds for their future use. Tapos, kung ano yung matitira, technically, yun yung magiging free cash ng company. And then, in a way, pwedeng dun palang mag-start na mag-decide yung company, okay, magbibigay ba tayo ng dividends for this year? Bawas na natin dyan. Tapos, free cash flow pa din. Okay? Kumbaga yun yung cash na wala pang balak yung company or hindi pa nakakapag-decide kung saan gagastusin. But, for the most part, kapag walang paggagamitan, ilagay sa operations. Okay? So, ayan. Free cash flow to the firm, for gagamitan sa operations ng company. Tapos, free cash flow to equity, yung pwedeng i-declare as dividends or earnings ng shareholders. Ayan. Equity kasi. Equity owners. Next, we have rates of return. Investors, lenders, finance professionals are focused on what type of risk-adjusted rate of return they can earn on their money. So, they assess rates of return on investment in the industry. ROI, return on investment. Magkano ang magkano ang kikitain ko dyan sa investment na yun kapag nag-invest ako dyan. Okay? So, ito yung various measures na ginagamit. Return on equity. Normally, yung return, it refers to net income. Net income after everything else, diba? Bawas na yung depreciation and amortization, bawas na yung interest and taxes, net income na talaga. Okay? So, net income divided by the total equity ng company na makikita mo sa statement of financial position or balance sheet. So, yun yung makakompute mo na return on equity. Okay? So, of course, mas mataas na ROE, much better. Ibig sabihin, mas malaki yung kinita ng company. Okay? Return on assets, net income, nakukuha mo sa income statement, divided by the total assets na makikita mo sa statement of financial position or balance sheet. Kung ano yung percentage na yun yung iyong ROA or return on assets. Okay? Mas mataas, mas maganda. Alright? Return on invested capital, ano kaiba nito sa ROE? Okay. Okay, so itong invested capital more on, I think, fixed assets, kasi kumbaga, di ba investing activities yung pag-acquire ng machineries, equipment, or pag-set up ng new building. Okay? So you have your return, which is the net income again, divided by your fixed assets, total fixed assets. Kasi ang assumption, you're using the fixed assets to generate revenue for the company. So invested capital yun. Ano? Kasi meron din namang capital yung company na, of course, hindi nila pinambili ng fixed assets, but rather they're using it as working capital sa operations. Okay? So magkaiba pa yun. So dito, sa return on invested capital, yung nilagay lang sa fixed assets. So net income over fixed assets, yun na yung ROIC mo. And again, mas mataas, much better. Dividend yield, I think, ano ba divisor nito? Equity or investment? Dividend, if nag-declare yung company ng dividend for 1 year, edi, either you get the, what do you call this? Yung dividend na natanggap ng individual. Ito, hindi mo to makakompute for the whole, It would depend on the individual investor. So you get how much an investor earns, tapos i-divide mo siya sa market price ng company. Okay? So, yun. Dividend na dineclare niya for, let's say, 1 share. 1 share divided by the market price of 1 share din. So, yun yung dividend yield. Okay? Magkano ang kinita or natanggap na earnings on a share. Sorry for the dogs. Anong problema nyo? Okay, next we have capital gain. Not familiar with this one. Price appreciation on an investment. Okay. Sa financial statements, makikita nyo yung di ba nga 2 years yung nakapresent doon? So, yung for the current year, at the year end, nilalagay din ng company yung market price nila at the year end. Tapos, syempre, yung sa previous year, nakalagay din yung market price nila during that year end. Okay, so pwede mong i-compare magkano yung tinaas ng market price for the last year. Okay, so in a way, yun yung capital gain mo. So yung difference niya, in a way, yun yung capital gain. Okay, magkano yung tinaas ng market price. Accounting rate of return. Average net income an asset is expected to generate divided by its average capital cost. This one is a bit advanced, so banggitin na lang natin. Internal rate of return, ganun din, medyo advanced. And this one would take into account yung time value of money din. So kukumpitin mo pa yung net present value. So, gagamit tayo ng formula ng present value to compute this. Okay. Pero in a way, nakadepende tong isa ay sa cash flow. In a way, siya, internal na gagamitin mo kasi yung information na kailangan mo dito is internal. Unless you can, properly project yung cash flow ng company in the future years. Okay. By using limited information. Okay. Pag outsider ka kasi, hindi mo masyadong kita or walang masyadong available na information sa'yo. Okay? Unlike in management ka, internal, of course, you can find the information that you need to accurately project kung ano yung possible na mangyayari in the future with regards to the cash flow of an investment. Okay? Next, we have valuation analysis. Okay, so dito sa valuation, you estimate what a business is worth, and then, the value of a business can be assessed in many different ways, and analysts need to use a combination of methods to arrive at a reasonable estimation. So there is a valuation. Sometimes yung market price nga ng companies, hindi siya yung, proper valuation nila because a lot of factors affect it. So in a way, maraming factors na kina-consider. Pwede ka mag-start sa market price and then you adjust it accordingly, depending on other factors like future plans ng company or yung kanyang current composition or yung quality of their management, quality of their governance, ganyan. So, maraming factors to take into account, okay? So, ito, you have your cost approach, the cost to build or replace. Okay. Relative value or yung market approach. So, yung comparable company analysis. Step by step, how to build comparable company. Add pala siya, ano. Precedent transactions. So, kung merong, in the previous year, meron bang mga investments na ginawa yung company and they are expecting it to help increase the revenue generation in the coming year. So, in a way, you can adjust, yung valuation ng company. Na, in a way, positive siya, no? Kasi since they made investments in the previous years, there is really a possibility na lumaki yung kanilang revenue in the future years. Okay? And then yung intrinsic value, discounted cash flow naman siya. I think this one yung mag-start ka sa market price, tapos depending on factors you take into account, you can either increase it or decrease it accordingly. Okay. So, ayun. And most of the time, nakadepende ito dun sa financial statements din, profitability nila, and then yung other factors na nabanggit natin dyan sa may bandang taas. Okay? So, yan, valuation. Next, we have scenario or sensitivity analysis. Ito, more on management, na ginagamit ng management, But of course, pwede rin naman gamitin ng investors. Performing scenario sensitivity analysis, way of measuring risk. Since the task of building a model to value company is an attempt to predict the future, it is inherently very uncertain. Okay, you could be right, you could be wrong. Building scenarios and performing sensitivity analysis can help determine what the worst case or best case future for a company could look like. Okay. Naalala ko na. Okay, so essentially, when you're trying to predict yung, projection, kung ano yung possible na mangyayari sa company in the future, hindi lang isang scenario ang gagamitin mo. You can create a best case scenario. Kumbaga, if all the conditions are good, ito yung best case scenario, right? And then you also create a worst case scenario. If the conditions are all bad, let's say, nag-continue pa rin yung mga lockdowns na ganyan, hindi pa rin na-attain yung herd immunity, hindi pa rin pinapayagang lumabas masyadong mga tao, okay, economy is still, restrained. So, ano yung worst case scenario? And then you compare that, kumbaga, worst case scenario, ito yung minimum earnings na maaari kang matanggap in this investment if the case is, the worst case scenario nga. And then, of course, you have your best case scenario. Sorry. And then, you can actually create more scenarios, hindi lang yung worst and best case. You can create any scenarios in between by taking into account different factors. So, let's say, pag tinanggal na yung lockdown for, let's say, 3 months, first 3 months, tapos, the next 9 months, okay na, pinayagan ng lumabas ng mga tao, ano yung possibility? How much could I earn in that particular situation? Okay? Or, let's say, may mga changes kayong ginawa sa company, balak namin, during the middle of the year, mag-invest kami sa ganito. So, ano yung maaaring magbago with that particular situation? Okay? So, that's why it's called scenario sensitivity analysis. Kasi, kapag may nabago na isang factor, how would it change yung performance ng company? Okay? How could it affect the whole performance of the company? Ayan. So, in a way, yung fundamental analysis talagang matrabaho siya. And most probably, ginagamit lang talaga ito ng mga full-time na financial analysts or full-time fund managers, full-time investors, ganyan. Pero sa ating mga, hapyaw-hapyaw lang. So, hindi masyado. Kasi, these are very time-consuming sa totoong buhay. Building scenarios, performing sensitivity analysis can help determine the worst case or best case future for a company could look like. Help a company prepare its budgets and forecasts. Then, kaya minsan merong mga naka-earmark, merong, tawag dito? I forgot the term. Hindi naman emergency fund, pero parang emergency fund, similar term to that, na yun nga, in case na ganito yung maging situation, merong nakaabang na pondo yung company to react to that particular situation. Hindi naman pwedeng may possibility na mangyari yung isang scenario tapos wala man lang kabalak-balak yung company na how it would react to that situation. So, that's not good. Kaya, yung mga companies, of course, they take into account ano yung mga possible changes na mangyari. Kunwari, merong mga bills na naka-propose pa lang in the Senate, but if it is passed, makaka-affect sa company. So, hindi naman yung mga tao or yung management, diba, hahayaan na walang nakaabang na pondong gagamitan for whatever effect those bills. Proposed pa lang ha, hindi pa napapasa yung bills, pero pinaghahandaan na ng company agad. Okay, so yun. Another example for scenario and sensitivity analysis. And then ito, look at how sensitive the value of the company is as changes in assumptions flow through the model. Ayan, merong mga ads again dito on possible uses. Pwedeng gamitin. Okay, variance analysis. Ito naman, comparing actual results to a budget or forecast. Okay, di ba at the beginning of the year, normally gumagawa ng budget ang company. Ito yung mga magiging kagastusan natin for this particular year. Pero more likely than not, hindi yun yung actual. Syempre, it's either tumaas ang presyo ng mga bilihin or eventually, hindi na pala kailangan ng department or may nakuha na siyang alternative na mas mura or pwede rin mas mahal or hindi na tinuloy ng company yung paggastos to this particular item kasi wag na lang, kasi nakita nila mas malaki kasi yung cost over the benefit or whatever reason, normally yung budget hindi siya nasusunod, okay? But of course, yung budget kasi, ang purpose niya naman talaga is to limit yung expenses ng company. For the most part, yung budget, hindi talaga inaalaw na mag-exceed sa budget. For example, certain item, hindi ka lalampas dapat dito. And in case you have to go beyond the limit, magsasabi ka muna sa management. I-justify mo muna bakit ka lumampas dun sa budget. Ano yung mangyayari? And bakit kailangan mong i-pursue itong expense item na to although lalampas siya sa budget. Okay, so kung may justification pa na mangyari, i-approve pa siya ng management kung go ba or hindi yung item na yan. Okay, for the most part, kapag within the budget siya, okay lang yan. Okay? Hindi na nag-move. Bakit di ka na umalis? Yan. Operating company, particularly for professionals working in the accounting and finance departments. Okay. Wala namang kaso, di ba, you have your budget, tapos you have your actual. Kapag hindi naman nagkakalayo, wala masyadong problema doon. Binibigyan lang ng attention ng accounting and finance and ng management kapag yung isang particular item is masyadong malaki, yung difference niya, yung budgeted sa actual. And yun nga, normally kapag maglalampas siya, nakikita agad siya ng management kasi it would need justification and approval ng nasa taas kapag more than the limit. Tapos, kapag below naman siya, normally hindi siya agad binibigyang pansin. Siguro at the end of the year na lang nabibigyan ng pansin. Yung mga sobrang baba, tinatanong naman ng management is, bakit hindi nyo nagamit yung budget na to? Anong nangyari? Ganyan. Pero, for the most part, hindi siya, hindi siya concerning kasi hindi naman nagamit yung budget. But, in a way, cause for concern pa rin siya kasi nga, sa halip na magamit ito for, other items na probably nangangailangan ng budget, tapos kayo dyan, binigyan kayo ng budget, hindi nyo naman ginastos. So, diba? Hindi siya, efficient utilization of the resources. Kasi nga, sa halip na magamit sa ibang purpose, nakatenga lang yung budget sa inyo, tapos hindi nyo naman ginagamit. Okay, so ayan. Mahaba pa ba? Ayan, patapos na pala. Okay. Inabot ulit tayo ng isang oras. Financial analysis best practices. All of the above methods are commonly performed in Excel. Kaya na sa Excel. Kasi sa Excel naman, maraming, can use formula there, functions, mga keyboard shortcuts. Analysts need to be sure they are using best practices when performing their work, given the enormous value that's at stake and the propensity of large data sets to have errors. So, yung best practices nila, extremely organized with data, keeping all formulas and calculations as simple as possible, Making notes and comments in cells to aid in better understanding kung ano ba yung mga figures na nandyan sa cell nyo or sa sheet nyo. Auditing and stress testing spreadsheets. Ayan. Kasi minsan, merong mga, spreadsheets na nakalink to each other, pero sometimes, hindi nag-e-effect yung link. So, you have to test, kung if you change an item in this one sheet, nagre-reflect ba siya dun sa nakalink na sheet? Okay? Kasi minsan, hindi nag-e-effect. Naka-experience na kami ng ganyan. Hindi gumagalaw yung kasunod na sheet. And then you have having several individuals review the work. Kasi pag ikaw lang, kasi syempre, possible na merong, di ba, prone to human error pa din. So, possible na may mga nakaligtaan ka, na mali ng formula, na baliktad na item, or kung ano man. So, it's good to have someone else review your work. Okay? Tapos, building in redundancy checks. Ayan. Kaya normally, in a way, maganda rin kasi yung isa lang taong gagawa kasi pag dalawa kayo, hello, ba't dalawa kayong gagawa? Pareho lang naman kayo ng gagawin. Okay? So, maganda yung isa preparation, yung isa review na lang. Okay? Pero in a way, medyo redundant din. Especially kung pareho pa rin sila ng process na gagawin. Using data tables and charts or graphs to present the data for better understanding. Kasi may mga tao naman na visual learner. Sorry. Mas madaling makaintindi ng data kapag naka-present in visual form kesa sa figure form. Okay? Making sound database assumptions. Okay? When you apply assumptions, diba, projections, and then sometimes, most of the time, naka-base siya sa historical data. Okay, of course, if you're going to make your projections, pwede ka mag-assume, pero make sure na yung assumptions mo is naka-based on data. It's either based on historical or based on the, plans ng company for the future na pwede mong i-account na on how you're going to change the figures for your projection. Okay? And then extreme attention to detail while keeping the big picture in mind. So make sure that you've taken into account all the things that you need to take into account. Okay? Yung wala kang ma-miss, kasi pag meron kang na-miss na isang item, medyo minsan malaking effect dun sa overall, let's say budget, yung ako ng budget, kalimutan nung isang department na meron pala siyang ganitong item. So, sa accounting and department, minsan, while doing the check, itatanungin mo rin, reasonable ba itong pinasa na budget ng departments o do they need to decrease this or possible ba na parang mas mataas pa dito yung kailangan nila. Okay? So, may mga ganong instances. Okay? Ayan, tapos meron ditong video explanation. I haven't seen this, pero ililink ko na lang din sa description nitong video. Alright? So, that's it for this one. Masyado ng madaming noises. Thanks and bye.